This is a legacy episode of the Lesbian Historic Motif podcast, originally released as part of the Lesbian Talk Show podcast group. Some references may be obsolete. The show looks at lesbian-relevant themes in history and literature, has interviews and discussions about current historical fiction with queer female characters, including fantastic versions of the past, and presents new original historical fiction for your enjoyment. I just spent the last 2 weeks in Ireland for the World Science Fiction and Fantasy Convention, popularly known as Worldcon. It's an annual gathering of science fiction and fantasy fans, authors, artists, and industry professionals. The convention travels every year, and in recent years has been making good on the claim that it truly represents the world. This year, it was in Dublin, Ireland. Last year in San Jose, California. The year before in Helsinki, Finland. And next year it will be in Wellington, New Zealand. Some podcasters attending Worldcon made plans to record live shows as panel discussions. I wasn't that organized, but I decided to send my listeners a set of audio postcards from a few of the attendees. Some of these were recorded with more ambient background noise than is ideal, for which I apologize. I asked people to introduce themselves, maybe talk about what they were enjoying about Worldcon, and give out a shout to something they currently love that involves queer women in science fiction, fantasy, or history. First up, we have Audrey Joy from London.
Hi, this is Adri Joy, reporting from Dublin Worldcon 2019. I'm from London in the UK. I'm also a writer for the fanzine Nerds of a Feather Flock Together. I'm having my first Worldcon at the moment. I'm having the most amazing time. I've met so many wonderful people. I've had lots of experiences and learning about when to turn up to panels and what's going to be full and what's going to be busy and queues and all of those adventures that I'm sure anyone else who's been to a Worldcon will also recognise. But what I found is that whatever I end up doing, even if it's not what I expected, has been really, really wonderful. And I have a book recommendation for you for the Lesbian Historic Motif Project podcast. I recently read The Ascent to Godhood by J.Y. Yang, who is a queer author based in Singapore. This is the fourth in their Tenterate series, and it focuses on a relationship between two women, one of whom happens to be the Empress of the Protectorate in her rise to power, and one of whom is kind of her handmaiden turned spy turned lover, who finds out that the relationship is not really what they expected, and who ends up playing quite a dramatic role in the sort of later historic events that happen. It's really inspired by Southeast Asia and Singapore and Malaysian culture. It's super queer in all forms, and it's got two amazing women at the centre. So thank you.
I was delighted to meet the three podcasters who host the Hugo finalist show Be the Serpent, although I only got postcards from two of them. Here's Freya Marsk from Australia with some favourite books.
Hello, my name is Freya Marsk. I'm a writer and podcaster from Australia. In terms of books that I have enjoyed recently that are about queer women, I want to shout out Janelle Ferreira's The Covert Captain, which was one of my favourite historical romances recently. And in terms of upcoming books, I am very, very excited for Tamsin Muir's Gideon the Ninth.
There's currently something of an explosion of SFF featuring queer characters, and author Everina Maxwell is excited about that. Her novel, Winter's Orbit, will be coming out from Tor in 2021.
My name is Everina Maxwell. I'm a science fiction author, and I think a really interesting thing about women in science fiction in particular is if you make a world where people are free to choose which of any gender identity they are attracted to, maybe that choice means more, maybe that choice means less, but it gives us a whole new perspective on it.
Irish SFF reviewer and classical historian Liz Burke was featured in a book appreciation show on this podcast a while ago. She has a few new book recommendations. I was delighted to be able to attend her wedding during the week before the convention.
Hello, my name is Liz Burke. I review books for Tor.com and Locus. I am a queer woman. I just got married, and my wife is wonderful. You don't have to put that in your podcast. And I read an awful lot of queer science fiction and fantasy, and the really, really great thing about the last couple of years is how much more of it there is. And Heather herself writes really good stuff, but I mean, the one that I most recently read and that's really blowing up in a sort of big way is This Is How You Lose the Time War by Amal El-Motar and Max Gladstone. And it is a novella, and it is the most fantastic, dramatic, over-the-top, time-travelling, epistolary romance, queer romance that you never knew you needed. And what I'm looking forward to... I'm looking forward to Arcadia Martin's A Desolation Called Peace. I am promised that there is queer kissing in it. And queer kissing and politics and, interrogation of colonialism, but also the queer kissing. So, I'm there.
A second member of the Be the Serpent podcast team, Jennifer Mace, provided some cheerleading for a favorite historical figure.
Hi, my name is Jennifer Mace, and I am a podcaster and fantasy author, currently working on an FF book involving Naples. And an interesting thing about FF in science fiction and fantasy is let's talk a little bit about the French spy Julie, who broke into a nunnery, made out with all of the nuns, and set it on fire on the way back out, who is frankly a role model for us all, and more people should read at least her Wikipedia article because it is excellent, and I wish to be her when I grow up.
Thank you. Julie D'Albany.
Yeah. Okay.
Worldcon is a great place for meeting up with online friends in far-flung lands. This next postcard is from someone I've known a long time and see in person too rarely. I first met Sarah Uckelman when she was a teenager and we were both in the Society for Creative Anachronism. Now she's a university professor in England and has plunged enthusiastically into writing and reviewing SFF.
Hello, I'm Sarah Uckelman. This is my first Worldcon, so greetings from Worldcon from a Worldcon newbie. It has been a fabulous convention because I've gotten so many recommendations for books, for authors, for blogs, for podcasts, for people to follow on Twitter. What I have really enjoyed is seeing the diversity of queer women that are showing up in SFF, because it gives me a chance to see people that maybe I didn't know that they were women like me, because I didn't know that that women like me were a thing. And to see them reflected in literature and media is a really neat and exciting and kind of scary thing, but scary in a good way.
2 years ago, Worldcon was in Finland, and the Finns had so much fun they are highly represented among the fans at Dublin. I met Katri when she came to my reading, and she was kind enough to contribute a postcard.
Hi, I'm Katri. I'm from Finland. This is my second Worldcon. I really like that there's more and more queer women in SFF and like lots of different times and places. Also, I'm just really happy when there's women interacting with each other and having relationships with one another, whether it's romantic or not. Some of my favorite books were I'm really fond of the Alpenia books, and another that I read recently was Alice Payne Arrives, which is time traveling lesbian and all kinds of adventure. I still need to read the second part, but it was really good.
One of the things I really love about my online community is being able to introduce people to each other and see new friendships develop. I met Framankira through Twitter several years ago, finally met her in person when Worldcon was in Helsinki, and have been delighted to introduce her to other SFF fans who have now become fast friends.
Hi, I'm Framankira, and I am an SSF fan and a fan of Heather's books. I love just all the queer women that we've been having in SF lately, and just how they've been in so many different places. The thing that comes to mind is This Is How You Lose a Time War, but also, well, Flood Tide, which is coming out there in November, and it feels like we're putting the queer women back from the places they've been erased, back into those areas, and it just feels so comforting.
I've strayed a bit from my historical mandate for this show, but in the realm of genre fiction featuring queer women, there's a lot of overlap between historicals, fantasy, and science fiction, as I hope the recommendations have shown. Conventions are also a great place for me to pick up new interview subjects, and I have a couple of people tentatively scheduled to do shows in the next year that I think you'll find as interesting as I do. These have been your Dublin Worldcon audio postcards. Having a great time. Wish you were here. I hope you've enjoyed this episode of the Lesbian Historic Motif Podcast. See the show notes for links to people and topics. Most shows will have a transcript linked as well. If you have a book announcement, a topic suggestion, or might like to appear on the show, please drop me an email. If you enjoyed this podcast, please rate it and subscribe on your favorite podcast app, and consider supporting our Patreon.